Well, if we're gonna find any ghosts, we better split up.
You're listening to Never Split Up, a horror movie podcast.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Never Split Up podcast. This is episode 51. And alongside me, as always, we have Anthony. My name's Nolan. And today we have a very special review of a very special movie. We are covering Pearl, released in 2022. And as well as that, we also have a special guest returning to the podcast, is Mr. Phil Walsh. Thank you, Phil, for joining us. How you guys doing?
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm good.
We
happy to be talking about a movie.
Yes. So we had Phil on last time when we covered our Halloween rankings during the Halloween time, our Halloween franchise rankings. That was a ton of fun. We got very good feedback from that. So we've been saying for a while now we needed to have Phil back on. So we're really grateful to have you back. And we know this movie means a lot to you. So we said we had to have him on for Pearl. So this is going to be a fun one. Before we get into it, just if you want to shout out your podcast real quick, Phil, and let people know how to find you. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. So I host a show every Friday called Phil at the Movies. You can get it on all your podcast apps and whatnot. It's also on YouTube now. So as I say, it's for the love of movies. Talk about new movies, old movies, cult favorites, pretty much anything that I enjoy, and hopefully you will as well. But encourage you to check it out and listen, subscribe, and again, I'm sure they'll do a plug, but make sure you go and follow these guys because they are truly the horror masters, and I'm at your service, gentlemen.
Well,
yeah, and I just want to thank
much.
Phil. I just want to thank Phil for allowing me on his podcast. We recorded a special Star Wars episode. I'm a big Star Wars fan, so thank you, Phil, for allowing me to talk about
Absolutely.
one of my favorite franchises in film. So look out for that on his podcast. That's going to be coming out in a couple weeks, that episode. But for now, we are talking all things Pearl, an extraordinary origin story, I believe was the tagline. And yeah,
Yes,
let's get into before Pearl. We talked about this before we started recording. Let's cover our scores real quick from X. So if you guys haven't listened to our episode on X, we did that, I think about this time last year. It's about a year ago. That was a great episode. We had a lot of fun. So if you want to pause this episode and then go back and listen to that, I recommend that. But let's just do a quick refresher, Anthony, of our scores, and then we'll kick it over to Phil, and he can tell us just his overall thoughts on X, just so we have kind of a baseline going into Pearl.
Okay, cool. Want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. First, I just want to say, Phil, thank you for coming back. Our Halloween ranking episode was actually our second best performing episode of all time. And I know you said that our H2O episode was a really good performer for you, so all the Halloween love, so we'll have to keep it going with the horror love.
Amen
Can't
to
wait to come back on your podcast. But yeah, I gave X a 7.8. I thought it was a really great movie. It's not an all-timer for me, but I just love the grimy throwback to the slashers. All the performances are great. We get a final girl, which I love. I love the slashers, so I'm, partial to that movie. I love Jenna Ortega in it. That scream is next level. Pearl is a nasty villain. It's just, I love the isolation. I mean, Brittany Snow is a scene stealer. It's just so damn good. It's such a good ride. And the kills are fun. The movie's fun. And Pearl's a crazy bitch. So I have a blast with X. Yeah, 7.8. It's a really, really, really good movie. One of the better slashers of the last 5 years.
Yeah, we feel pretty similarly. So I gave it a 7.5, so pretty much identical to Ant. Everything Ant just said for sure. I think it's super grimy, super sleazy, super dirty. It was a surprise for me for sure. I went into it not having too high expectations, but I enjoyed myself, and I've enjoyed it more and more. I believe I said it on our last episode when we covered X that I didn't have it scored as high going into that episode, but having rewatched it a couple times and doing that review with you, it definitely bumped my score up. So yeah, Not an all-timer for me either, but 7.5, really, really good score for, especially for the type of movie that is. Like you said, it has a great cast. It's got really unique villains. I love the setting. It's a fun watch to just kind of throw on when you don't really know what to watch, when you're just sitting home at night. And yeah, 7.5 for me. Phil, what about you?
Yeah, so we're pretty much all in agreement there. It's a 7.9 for me.
Oh, hell yeah.
On another day, I could probably say it's an even 8, but I'll be a little divisive tonight. It's a movie that frankly has no business being as good as it is, and I think part of that is just Ty West's originality and his clear love for the genre. I mean, you both said it. It's got great hat tips to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, even a little bit of Halloween, Psycho, certainly even the snuff films, if you will, of the day. It's a great tribute to that, and of course it introduces, in my opinion, one of cinema's great horror villains and slashers in Pearl. So, I mean, frankly, more films like that kind of take the concept but sort of reinvent the wheel in a unique and clever way.
Okay, cool. So we're kind of all pretty much in agreement, pretty close in our scores for X. Um, yeah, let's get into Pearl. I have a feeling it's not going to be as close our scores for Pearl, but we'll see. We'll see. You never know. Who wants to go first? Why don't you talk about the very tight cast?
And all that.
We've already talked about Ty West, but go over that real quick.
Now, are you guys familiar with Ty West's other work? Like, have you delved into his filmography? Okay, so we'll have to. Okay, he's a horror. He's good with the horror shit. I just want House of the Devil is just so damn good. But anyway, okay, so Pearl came out in 2022, the same year as X. Great release strategy. I believe X came out in March of 2022, and Pearl came out right around my birthday in September. It stars the icon Mia Goth playing Pearl, who also played Pearl and Maxine in X. What an icon. Then we have, I believe, the new Superman, David Cornsweet, stars as her love interest. He's the projectionist. And then we have, I just want to give a shout out to her mom, Ruth Tandy Wright. She is,
Oh yeah.
who in this movie, it wouldn't work without that performance. So we have her. We have Emma Jenkins Purr, who plays Mitzi, and I'll just round it out with the father, the poor dad, Matthew Sunderland. So that's our cast, but it's all Mia Goth. I mean, this movie is a showcase for Mia Goth. And it takes place in 1918, so it's a prequel to X when we find out, Pearl's origins. So that's the basic premise of the movie. So let's get into this. Let's get into it. I want to know your thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, Phil, why don't you kick
You
us
want me to
off?
go? Okay,
And just give
that's
us
fair.
your bullet points, overall thoughts, and then we'll kind of dive in a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I will just start off at the top and say, to me, this is the better film of the two so far that we've gotten in the soon-to-be X trilogy. This, to me, is how you do a horror villain or a slasher's origin. They could have gone down the rabbit hole and had some like complicated backstory and showed almost like a cradle to grave moment and story. They didn't do that. They kept her obscure, which I think is the best thing with any monster, any slasher. You don't want to overexploit a villain. We're just introduced to Pearl, her life on the farm. I think the scenery of it being in 1918, you've got the war going on in Europe, you've got the pandemic sort of trickling over or still in the air, so to speak. All of that creates an atmosphere of unease and, frankly, angst that is throughout the entire film. And then we have this character, Pearl, who, frankly, we don't know why she is the way she is. She just is. And I think sometimes what we don't know is even more terrifying because you can then create your own backstory or imagine what set this woman off. I mean, she alludes to various things, but never gives a concrete definition. Everything is like, oh, there's something wrong with me, or why are you afraid of me? I mean, it's such an unsettling performance, and again, I don't think you could have anybody other than Mia Goth in that role. She is Pearl, she's Maxine, but I mean, for our purposes tonight, she is Pearl. I mean, just that iconic scene with her in the red dress, her with the axe. I mean, to me, what I think I love the most about this film, outside of the whole psychological aspect, it's pretty much a bastardized version of The Wizard of Oz, but in the best possible way. I mean, the throwbacks to a lot of the Technicolor musicals of like the 1940s and 50s, but with that kind of twisted bent and horror angle. I mean, just absolute chef's kiss. Ty West clearly knew what he was doing, and also Mia Goth because she co-wrote the script with him. So this is more than just like all right, let's make a scary movie. This is clearly a passion project, and it comes through. It bleeds through, if you will, scene to scene. This is not just some sort of studio top-down production. I mean, this feels like a work of art. And I mean, not to like, bring in Martin Scorsese, but like when you've got Marty, talking about this film and praising it as a piece of legitimate cinema. I mean, that doesn't happen all the time with horror films. I mean, we all love the stuff, but like to have someone of his caliber sort of recognize a movie like this, I think it sort of underscores at the very least what a special film it is. And I mean, look at it. It's giving way to a trilogy. That doesn't happen, very often in the horror genre. To quote another famous icon from another franchise, which I know Anthony will certainly recognize. But no, I love this film. It's whimsical at points. It's weird. I mean, it's a movie again, kind of like X. It has no business being as good as it is because I mean, you're sort of all right, taking the origin of a slasher and trying to, spin it out for an hour and a half. It could have gone into sort of like melodrama and, I mean, not to sort of evoke Halloween 2007, but like that to me is like what not to do with explaining or rationalizing a slasher. Like this is sort of like less is more, and it leaves a lot to the imagination of the audience. We're just sort of getting a snapshot of Pearl at a certain point in time, and kind of the rest, we can fill in like, oh, what happened here, what happened there. Like this is the moment she became the monster in the film X, and I think it's just it's a brilliant film, and it held together, of course, by Goth and just her unhinged and slightly neurotic performance as Pearl. It's beautiful, it's maddening, it's haunting, and I'll just say it right now, it should have been nominated at the very least for an Academy Award, but won't go off on that tangent just yet.
Okay, guys, that's our episode. Thanks for listening. Wow, that was a lot to unpack.
Yeah,
I will say I agree with you in terms of when you said the passion really bleeds through onto the screen. That's evident, and I love how this movie came to be. You had Ty West and Mia Goth sitting down working on just not even a movie, just a backstory for this character in X, this old woman. What was her backstory to help Mia Goth get into that role? And they took it and they ran with it, and they said, we have a movie with this. And I believe they shot the films back to back during COVID, so they were able to shoot the films back to back, which was awesome. And it was, for the most part, a secret release. It was a surprise. I believe the trailer premiered at the film festival that X premiered at. So I think they played X and then they played the Pearl trailer right after, which is brilliant. I mean, awesome marketing strategy. It was such a cool concept to see this old woman in X, and this is why Pearl. We talked about this in the X. Would we feel the same about Pearl and X if they flipped the releases? And I think we would, because I think it's unfair to say we wouldn't. But I think Pearl benefits from it because we have this added layer from X. Because it's a slow burn, Pearl, for the first, act or so, the first half of the movie. Not a lot happens, and you have this unhinged, uneasy character played by Mia Goth. But if you were to go into it not seeing X, you don't really have that added layer of suspense and mystique. So it's definitely a second part to, you know, what will be a trilogy. That's clear. But the fact that they had this planned out from the beginning, like I said, it was written as a just backstory for the character, really shines through because they really put a lot of love into it. Pearl is front and center. Mia Goth is front and center, like you said, Anthony. There was essentially there's maybe 2 performances besides Mia Goth that are standouts, and that's Ruth, and that's the projectionist, just because he has a bunch of screen time. And like you said, he's going to be our new Superman, and he looks like Superman in this movie. I think he sent this movie's tape reel to what's his name over at DC, and he's like, all right, you're hired, because he looks like Clark Kent. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm excited for that. I know, Phil, you're a big DC guy, so I'm sure you're excited for that movie. But anyway, we're getting off topic here. I love the vibes. I love how Ty West had called it almost a demented Disney story, I believe he put it, which is really cool. It's very old Hollywood. Like you said, it takes place in 1918, so you get the Wizard of Oz vibes. I mean, that's clearly evident. The Scarecrow scene, especially. We'll talk about that later. I like the kills. I think the kills. There's only a few kills, but they're very impactful and they work. And it works for me. The dinner scene. The dinner scene is one of my favorite movies. One of my favorite scenes in modern horror. I put it almost right up there with the Hereditary dinner scene. Those are like my 2 favorite dinner scenes of the 2000s. And
whoa there.
Yeah, I mean, it's in that territory for me. The first time seeing that scene, and we'll get into it, I was on the edge of my seat. I was like, holy shit, what the fuck is about to happen? So, everything that Phil said, I love this movie as well. I can't wait to talk about it. This should be fun. And Ant, what about you? What's your overall thoughts?
Okay, cool. This movie does not work without Mia Goth. She just is the heart and soul. If it was anyone else, this movie might fall flat. I love that she came up with the idea when they were filming X, and her and Ty West co-wrote it. So this is a really her creative big swing at this movie. Prequels are tricky. Prequels are very tricky, and a lot of, especially horror prequels, they're just like, let's just do the same thing as what came before, but then we'll add a little bit of like, oh, here's a haha tongue-in-cheek of like, this is how that happened in the next movie. This movie doesn't do that. This creates it's a character study. And it also benefits that it takes place way back in the day versus X. They're completely 2 different movies. This is a full-on character study with Pearl. And I think that that's why, as a prequel, this really works so well, because we learn, we're not just saying like, oh, this is why she ended up with this. No, we're with her, and we're with her in this time period where she's like literally turning evil. But it's a whole character arc. It's not just like, oh, haha, this is why this happened in the next movie. It can't, because it takes place in 1918. So they actually had to be creative and make their own story out of it. I love the slow burn. I just think that Mia Goth she's on another level. And as far as Ty West, I think this trilogy is so special because every single movie, we got the trailer for Maxine. Every single movie in this trilogy is so different. So when people almost ask me which one I prefer, it's so hard because you can pick your favorite, but you can't compare them. Like how X is so different from Pearl, whereas, Halloween 2, you can have your favorite. Scream 2. You can pick your favorite because they're in the same vibe as each other. Ty West is making this special trilogy where each movie stands on its own and has such a different, distinct feel. I love the Wizard of Oz fucked up fairy tale-ness of this movie. Nolan, I love an opening credits, and this credit sequence in the beginning is all-timer. It's so good. It's a fucked up fairy tale, and Mia Goth kills it. I love it. It's a great movie. I don't know if Nolan said which one he prefers yet, but Phil did. But I will say that just as rewatch value go, and something that I'm going to go back to more, I do give X the slight edge because that's my slasher throwback to the 70s dirty movies. And it's a slasher with a final girl and a badass villain. this is the build up to that villain arc. So I appreciate them both. And obviously, I watch them both back to back. Whenever I want to watch one, I have to watch the other. So they go hand in hand. They complement each other because they're so different. But yeah, Pearl is just a tad below X because of my personal preference. But I mean, I'm gonna get into it right now. Mia Goth, she should have won. She should have won the Academy Award, let alone be nominated. I hate what the Academy does to horror. We have to have that conversation. She had that conversation in an interview for this, and I agree. She should be. I mean, this is one of the best performances of the last 5 years. She stands alongside Toni Collette, where she got snubbed too. I don't understand it at all. And I'm just so happy that Ty West created this little trilogy, and that Mia Goth gets to play two iconic characters in one franchise. You don't get to say that. For any other actor does not get to say that. So I love Pearl. Great character study. This is the movie where I will go to if I want to watch an acting showcase, and X is the movie I'll go to if I want to watch my throwback to the 70s grindhouse slasher. So two very different movies, but two movies that complement each other.
You know, it's so true what you said about how prequels can fall victim to the callbacks to the original film, and they kind of set up like, oh, this is why we see this in X. Pearl does that a couple times in the movie. I mean, the au revoir Johnny scene with the car comes to mind, but it's not forced, and it feels so natural. It's almost as if, I mean, I picked up on it right away, but I could see a lot of people not even realizing that it's a callback to X at first. And then until maybe they watch the movies back and they realize, because it's so, it doesn't play as that. It's so natural. And that's just a testament again to how they built this script from the ground up, just with the love of the character and just paying really attention to detail with the script. I think that's obviously, besides Mia Goth's performance, the script is everything in this movie.
Well, and it's Mia Goth too.
It's, yeah, exactly. So kudos to her and Ty West. So what do you guys feel about the Technicolor? Because I know they originally, I believe I read, and correct me if I'm wrong, I know, Phil, maybe you've done a little research on this movie. They wanted to go black and white at first, and I believe the studio nixed it and said, we don't want black and white. So instead, they went the complete opposite way, and they went Technicolor. I thought it was a brilliant choice to go Technicolor. The way I interpret it, and I don't know about you guys, is, you know, and Phil touched on this, it's 1918, we have World War I, we have the pandemic, the what is it, the Spanish flu virus was running rampant. It's kind of the tail end of that. She's grown up in a German-American farm, so we know how Americans feel towards Germans. So it's very bleak, very dark. So to get that Technicolor, it is such a contrast to the times, and I believe it kind of highlights, because we have Pearl as our main POV, it kind of highlights Pearl's mental state and how she's just whimsical and carefree in a way, and wants to be a star. I think that mirrors where her head is at, if that makes sense, seeing the movie like we do. And I think it was just a brilliant choice. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I agree with that, because you compare that to X, and it's very gritty, it's grungy, it's a throwback to the 70s and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And you kind of, I think, really put your finger on it, Nolan. It really is a representation of where Pearl's mindset is. By the time we see her in X, this is an old woman. You know, she's dirtied, for lack of a better word. The world is messier. You know, she's sort of accepted reality. This is sort of Pearl, you know, living in fantasy land. This is Pearl embracing sort of all her dreams, her desires, and sort of impulses. And it should pop. It should be bright. It should be almost obnoxious to the point that it's in your face, and you're like, okay, wait, is this reality? Is this something going on inside her mind? And I like how the film leaves you with that question, and I think that's the genius of the coloring of this film, because one, we're so not used to a horror film taking place pretty much in broad daylight. I mean, with only a few key moments, a lot of the quote unquote action, if you will, takes place in broad daylight. And that's unsettling in its own right, because generally we think, oh, at night, and that's where the shadows are. Again, you compare that to X, not the case here, and that just sort of leaves you as the audience being like, on the one hand, like you're drawn into it because it is so eye catching and vivid, but then it's almost like, okay, wait, is this reality? Like, what is going on here? Like, it really has a unique way of sort of warping your own perception of what is going on. And I think that's, you could only accomplish that by doing it with the Technicolor. I think black and white, while maybe stylistically would have made sense given for the time, I don't think you have the same impact. I mean, again, you lose the red dress. I mean, that's an iconic an iconic outfit in its own right.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I usually prefer that the artist have the say, but in this case, the studio is letting them make a movie literally before the previous movie came out, so they have to,
Yeah.
they're like, guys, help me out a little bit, so make it color.
Yeah.
But I do think it actually benefited them in the end because, I mean, 100% agree with both of you said. I mean, Pearl in the beginning of the movie, you can know she's still demented. I mean, she kills she does some crazy shit.
Yeah.
She's always crazy, but she has this hope that she's gonna be able to leave. She doesn't want this life. She just hates being with her mom. She hates being there at the farm. She has hope to make it and to be a star. And you see that comes with all the color and the glam. And then I love by the end of the movie when she's preparing for Howard to come home, when he comes back and he sees this friggin' craziness, it almost does kind of have the vibe in the kitchen at the end where there's no more color, and you can almost contrast that to how X ends up. So I do think that the studio helped them out a bit with this, and like, you got to do something, and they were like, oh, let's be creative and do the opposite, and just do super colorful. So I 100% agree, and I love that, it's such a contrast to how Pearl is, like Phil said, in X, where she lost her chance and now she's just secluded to this life of, I mean, she made her choice in Pearl and then she just ended up like that, and now it's all dark and grimy and gritty in X versus the colorfulness of the first half of Pearl. It's so damn good. I think it's perfect.
That's a really good point that you said, Phil, how you're not sure if things are actually happening because it's almost like a fever dream. And I'm when you said that, it made me thinking, and it's like there are some scenes in this movie where you could interpret it as it didn't happen. It happened in her head. Particularly, and we know that this is real because of X, but if you don't have the backstory of X, the scene where she kills Mr. Goose and feeds him to the alligator,
Theta.
That Theta could not exist. That's the style that this movie, we don't have confirmation that ever happened, that she killed Mr. That could have just played in her head, and she could have just been standing over the goose. And so, yeah, it definitely fucks with you. It definitely plays with your head for sure. There are some things that she does where I remember specifically on first watch that Pearl does where it threw me for a loop. I mean, Theta's when she gets the eggs and she brings the egg up to the barn.
Oh my god!
And then leaves the egg and then comes back to it. I was perplexed. I was like, what? Because again, you thought that was a callback to X, and it's like, okay, she's gonna raise this new alligator, and it's gonna be the alligator from X, but then just totally subverts your expectations and obviously crushes the egg. So stuff like that keeps you uneasy and keeps you on your seat, I think, is also what makes this movie such a success, at least for me. It's just brilliant.
It literally leads you in one direction, and then it completely mind fucks you. It's one of those situations where, again, the egg scene is a perfect example of that. Even the scene with her father on the dock. Now you know she's not going to do it, but it's like, I mean, the movie does such a great job of luring you in at that point. You're like, oh my god, she's going to feed him right to the alligator right there. Like, it's like, even though you think, no, there's no way it can happen, it's like, well, wait, she's that crazy. She might just do it.
Yeah. And I love what you said, Anne, how at the end she kind of accepts her fate, and it's a very different feeling. But the fact that you know that she doesn't, because you know that she has victims through the decades that lead us to X, and that she has these impulses, and that Howard has to just go along with it and cover it up. I mean,
Really,
it leaves
Howard.
the ending again. I talk about the layers to this movie, that because we get X, this script is so brilliant, because on the surface level you have one thing, but then knowing so much from the sequel and the previous installment, it's like, wait a minute, that's not necessarily the case. So, I mean, we'll get more into the ending when we get towards the end of this episode, but yeah, there's so many things that they do so brilliantly. Why don't we take it back to, and you mentioned the opening sequence and how it's
so
potentially an all-timer for you. Why don't you go through that, and we can talk about that.
Oh, I love that sequence so much in the barn when she's putting on a show. I mean, I don't like when she kills Mr. Goose. I don't like animal death, but it's just, I mean, the shot when she feeds it to Theta, and that's when the Pearl title card, I mean, that's just, how do you get more perfect than that? That's just an iconic title drop. And I love a title drop, so that's an all-time, that's one of the all-time title drops for me. I love it. I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And they freeze it at the perfect moment too, like right when he's got the goose in his mouth. It's awesome. It's such a cool shot.
It's introduced you to the fucked up fairy tale of it. It's just, you know, you're in for a fucked up Wizard of Oz fairy tale turned horror movie, like just from the opening scene.
Yeah, for sure. Phil, what are your thoughts on the opening?
I mean, you said it perfectly, Anthony. I mean, it sets the stage for what is to come. I mean, when I saw this film the first time, I wasn't sure what to expect, because okay, it's an origin story, it's a prequel. Like, you know, this could be really good, it could be really bad. Like, you know, there's always those sort of extreme variables. But I'm right there with you. That opening just, it sets the tone. It's so bizarre. Like, it's not what you might expect from this type of a film, or a film in this genre. I mean, even I think back to to X, just to sort of compare it. That's much more methodical and kind of takes its time, and sort of almost drags you to where it's going. Whereas right here, it's in your face. This is the kind of movie that you're going to be in for. And again, right when she brings the Mr. Goose over to Theta, it's like, okay, I see where we're going. My ticket is sold. Let's go on for this ride. And yeah, I mean, just the way it freezes. I mean, it's such a callback to movies of the 1930s and 40s, and it's sort of that grand, almost operatic quality, but yet done in the genre of a slasher or horror film. I mean, just a perfect melding of the mind, so to speak.
Yeah, when I saw that, I was like, I believe in my head, I was like, okay, here we go. This is what we're in for. So
yeah,
definitely effective. And I love what you said, how it's not as methodical as X, because we said it a couple times already. It is a slow burn, but it's not methodical. So that helps the movie tremendously. Keep your interest at all times. You never know what's going to happen and what's going to happen next. I want to talk about Ruth. I think Ruth, played by Tandy Wright, as Ant said, was an amazing character. So many layers to that character, especially towards the end when you get the dinner scene and you get her eventual death. I really feel for Ruth. I don't know how you guys do. I mean, she's set up as the typical, controlling mother. Like we said, she's a German American, so she's very stern. She's very, Pearl is our villain, but she's also our POV. So, horror fans are going to root for Pearl because that's the way the movie is set up. I mean, we want to root for Pearl because it's fun to root for Pearl. So in a way, Ruth is kind of the pseudo villain of the movie because she's anti-Pearl and she's not letting Pearl do what she wants. But I love the layers to her. And, watching this back second, third time, I really feel bad for Ruth, and I'll let you guys talk about her, but I really think she did the best she could with the circumstances, and, Pearl at the end realizes that, and she has that super creepy heart-to-heart with her corpse on the staircase where, she envisions her cuddling with her mother, and It's pretty impactful, and I think she was a great character because you have the villain to the villain in a way, and I think it was an extra layer to this movie that I quite frankly didn't expect and was a pleasant surprise.
I agree 100%. I mean, we're talking about a movie that takes place in 1918, so Ruth, obviously, women back then also, they had their role, as bad as that sounds, it just is what it is. So we don't know what her past experiences were, so yes, she's a very, like, domineering and mother, and she doesn't go about express herself, I would say, in the best way to Pearl. She's very mean. But I think deep down, she almost is like, you don't want to go out there and put yourself out there because you're going to get hurt and you're going to end up, you don't want to put yourself out there. You're going to get put down and it's not going to work out for you. Your role is to take care of the family, take care of your spouse, and keep the farm going. So I just feel like in her own twisted, fucked up way, she did it in a horrible way, and she literally mentally and verbally abuses Pearl, and physically at some point abuses Pearl. She's almost in her weird, twisted up own little way looking out for her. So I do feel for her. Obviously, she pokes the bear a little too much and she gets what's coming to her. But I do really feel for her because I do think deep down she's just looking out for Pearl's best interests in her own weird way.
Yeah, I agree with that because they could have easily just made her out as a stock character and given her no personality or depth. And I think it was really inspired to, like you said, Nolan, to add the layers to this character because, I mean, the irony is by the end of the film, Pearl realizes her mother was right. I mean, it's dark, it's haunting, and all throughout it, you had this sort of clash of generations, of viewpoints, of lived life experiences, and they're meant to be opposing each other throughout the entire film. And I sort of, again, one of the brilliance of the movie, it sort of gets you on Pearl's side, pretty much throughout the entire moment, right until she finally does away with her mother. I mean, that's where like, okay, wait a minute, we flipped the switch here,
wait, too far, Pearl.
Pearl, yeah, reel it in, Pearl, reel it in. No, and yeah, I mean, I love it when a movie can sort of like get you, rooting against this character who, may not come across well and certainly doesn't always articulate their points effectively, but ultimately sort of has some moral or some point that is valid. And ultimately, as Pearl, realizes by the end, yep, her mother was right. And everything that was going on, came to pass, so to speak. I mean, there's that line I think that she says early on, like, you have to, you'll only be happy once you realize you can make the best of what you have. And, I love how Pearl just brushes that aside throughout the entire film up until the point where she then realizes, oh shit, I guess my mom was right. I have to, accept what my situation is here.
And also,
that's a tale.
Pearl's dad is Pearl's dad is paralyzed and disabled, so Ruth is the man and the woman of the house at this point, running everything. So that's just another layer to her character as well.
And it's a tale of many generations. I mean, it's still relevant today. I mean, we've all been angsty teenagers, young adults, and had our parents say something to us that just sounds ridiculous. But, now that we're adults now, we can look back and say, you know what, they had their best interests for me and they were trying to prepare me for the world. And that still happens now. And like you said, Ant, we have the Pearl's father. I don't even think he has a name in this movie.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, poor guy, like you said. And Ruth had hopes and dreams when she was younger. It's pretty evident that she sees herself in Pearl, and she, in her own way, is trying to prepare her for this cruel world and this world that doesn't give you anything. And you have to work for, and she even says it. She's like, "You think I wanted this life? I got the short end of the stick, but I'm making the best of it, and I'm raising you, and I'm taking care of your father, and you have to make the best of your situation." So yeah, I'm glad we're all in agreement on that. She was an amazing character. I thought the actress that portrayed her was amazing. speaking in German as well as English really validated that and really showed you, like, you know, kind of like, you know, she's an immigrant. She's a, you know, she came to, you know, and with the time, you know, for Germans, there's so many layers. We can have a whole episode talking about kind of the dynamics of that. But yeah, I'm glad we all love that. Let's get to the projectionist scenes and all the scenes in town.
Scarecrow.
Yeah, the Scarecrow. Let's leave the farm for a bit and talk about some of that. What were some of your highlights and I mean, you said you don't really like this movie as much as X, so you're gonna have a lower score, I'm assuming. Was there any things that didn't work for you? We can get into the negative real quick. Wherever you guys want to take this, we can take it.
Yeah, like I said, it's not that I don't like it as... It's just, I can't... it's hard to compare the two. They're so very different.
I know.
It's just, I prefer to go back to X more than Pearl.
It's just a preference of the subgenre for you. Yeah, I get it.
I think, I mean, the movie is pretty much all build-up until the end. I think, I wouldn't really cut anything. I just maybe would have added a couple little more Pearl going apeshit moments, maybe. I mean, I have like little nitpicks, and it's just... My thing is, I think that X complements Pearl, whereas X doesn't need Pearl to complement that movie. I think that Pearl stands alongside X, but X doesn't really need Pearl. I think that it really works. Pearl really needs X to stand side by side with it. That's where, like, I can go back and watch X, where whenever I watch Pearl, I'm like, oh, I need to watch X as well. So that's my kind of like
that's interesting because I don't feel that way, actually. I rewatched Pearl for this episode. I just watched Pearl, and I didn't. This was the first time I just watched it without X, and I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like I needed to watch X before or after Pearl. I thought it stood on its own. So that's interesting you say that. I kind of disagree with you there. I don't know, Phil, where you land on that. I mean, it's a second installment, so you're always going to have the benefit. You know, X was the first installment. That's always going to be a little bit of an unfair advantage with that. But I think it's like you said, it's so different that I don't need X to watch Pearl. So I'm going to disagree with you there, Ant.
To me, it really does stand on its own, and I think if anything, it's made me probably appreciate X even more because you sort of get that. All right, this is where ultimately these characters ended up, and even though, you know, in the chronology X comes first, I think there's just that added layer of what goes on in Pearl. I mean, it's a small scene. It's not even a scene in X, but like you see the wheelchair up against the side of the house when they first get there. And like, you know, when you first, you know, watch X, it's like, all right, whatever. But then like once you know what that wheelchair represented and its connection to Pearl, it just sort of adds an extra layer of, and in a way, almost pathos, because it's like, all right, that was once her dad's chair, and it's, you know, just sitting out there collecting rust and rotting away by the side of the house. So yeah, I mean, to me, it enhances X, but I mean, even though it is a prequel / sequel, I almost treat it as like it's its own thing because it is so unique and sort of one-off in a way. I mean, even though again it connects to, you know, what came before it and sort of acts as a great companion piece, just as a character study. I mean, you're just wrapped up in this world for, you know, 90 minutes or whatever it is, and it in many ways that's all you need, because the movie does such a great job of like projecting, if you will, what may happen. And, you know, again, if you watch X, all right, it's a great compliment, but like you can kind of almost spin it off in your own mind of like, okay, well, you know, what's going to happen now? I mean, the ending, we'll get to it, you know, certainly when we get to it, but like, I mean, that's a perfect ending. Like, you know, again, less is more. We don't need a huge wrap up or anything like that.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Phil. I think that it does enhance X. And again, guys, listen to our review of X. One of my nitpicks, while it was unique, was the fact that it was it was an old lady and it was an old man killing these people in X. And there are so many never split up moments in that movie. Because it is that slasher grindhouse style. I mean, it was intentional, so it's not, you know, I'm not knocking it, but, you know, it doesn't have those super menacing villains like you typically get with a slasher. you have these two old people that are just taking out like these really young, really fit guys, and and that's what makes the movie kind of great. But it's kind of like the villains in a way are a little weak in my mind. So Pearl definitely enhances that, knowing what Pearl was before she turned into what she was in X. So yeah, I think that's a good point, Phil. I'm gonna agree with you. But I think both stand on their own. I'm not gonna say that you need to watch Pearl to watch X. I think, I gave it a 7.5, a very good score. I think they're two really good movies for sure. So yeah, let's get back to Pearl. Let's get back to the scenes in town. The projectionist. What do you guys feel? Because my thoughts on him have changed over different viewings. What do you think of his character overall, and kind of his intentions, and what kind of person he is?
I'll start. I got the first time I saw this, I thought he was a projection. He was something in her mind, and I'm now more on the side that maybe there's more reality to him than the original intention. But it's such a unique character because on the one hand, like, he kind of pokes the bear a little bit, but at the same time, like, he's talking about being the wrong place at the wrong time kind of a guy, and literally walked into a almost an insane asylum in a lot of ways. And I think part of what it is, he has like, there's like an aw shucks mentality to him, but that he's also kind of otherworldly and very suave and sophisticated. And that's a great contrast against Pearl, particularly when they first interact. And there, I think it's like 2 or 3 different scenes, and like he clearly has the advantage, so to speak, over her, like just in terms of sophistication and stature. But I like how it then immediately shifts once he enters her world on the farm, and you see this, complete, situation where he's out of his element, but he never sort of grows into that situation. Whereas like at first, Pearl's very timid and reserved when she meets him in the back of the movie house, but by the second time, like, she's much more comfortable. She's much more almost acclimated, or forcing herself to be acclimated into this world, partly probably because she wants it. But like the first time I saw her, like, I was like, okay, maybe this is like all going on inside her head, or like she's imagining it more differently than it actually is. And again, I like how you can sort of run with it, and never quite have either a definitive answer, or it's almost like a multiple choice. Like every answer can almost work in depending on the situation, or even like your mood of watching the movie on a certain day.
That's good. I like that. Yeah, well, the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, I'm charmed by him. Like, I'm falling under this spell. Like, this is good." And then now, when I rewatch it, I'm like, he's kind of a little sleazy at some points,
Yeah,
too.
I feel the same way. Yeah,
I feel like the first time, like, "Oh yeah, this guy's all I'm charmed." Like, yeah, I'll go hang out with him. He's charming. But now I'm like, it's like he saw this inexperienced, innocent woman, and brought her in. It's like, oh, let's watch this porno together. He's like, he just wants to get he wants to, sleep with her and move on, and almost kind of groom her a little bit. And then after he sleeps with her, he takes her back to the house. He's like, I bit off more than I can bite with this shit. Like, I'm in trouble. So I do think that his main goal wasn't to like help her break out. It was pretty much just to get in her pants. Like, I know he's trying to help her, but it's just to help himself. So I think he's actually a sleazeball, and then he just picked the wrong one to mess with. That's what I really that's how I watch it now.
I definitely took him kind of the same way as you, and on the surface level, super suave, if you will. I do land where you land now. I understand the layers. You have a little bit of power dynamics. Like you said, he's taking advantage of this naive farm girl who's clearly super immature, is not really well-rounded. He calls himself a bohemian, so if you believe everything that's happening, Phil, I guess you're a little on the fence of how much is true, but he's been around the world. He's very cultured. He's very experienced. I'm sure we don't know his age, but I'm sure he's older than her. So he's trying to take advantage of her, and he's ignoring the red flags. And so he doubles down on it, and he obviously, they sleep together, and there are so many never split up moments in this movie, in particular with his character, but the first one has to start with him offering her a ride back to her farm. I mean, he should have known, he should have seen what type of girl this is, and how she would get super unhealthily attached to not only him, but her dream of leaving the farm. And she even slips when she's with him. She says, I forget the exact quote, but she says, "I wish they would just die," referring to her parents. And he's like, "Excuse me, what was that?" She's like, "Oh, nothing." And, he's like, "Oh, okay." And they kind of just brush past that. But I'm like, whoa. Like that, dude, that's a huge red flag. So,
dude.
So when she's saying that, and now you're offering her this hope, this great hope to kind of leave the country with him. I mean, go to Europe and be in the bright lights. He definitely promised her the world, and he definitely slipped up there. He and then he doubled down by taking her home. He's definitely sleazy for sure. And I love what you said, Phil, how once they get to the farm, they're now in her element and the tables turn. Yeah. I mean, she's not in total control, but you see when she's cleaning up, the mess of the previous night and stuff. But
right.
She's so different once she's back on that farm that it scares him. I mean, he really has no tact in that situation. You're yelling at him to fucking like be a little bit more smart in what he says, and he drops the ball there. Like I said, one of many never split up moments, especially in this third act for sure.
There's just as much never split up moments in this as X, in my opinion, if not more.
Yeah.
But I love what you said about what he said about traveling out of, because we don't even know. He could just be lying that he's been traveling, moving out of country, doing all this. It kind of parallels. I like their commentary. Like, this is like show business. It's almost like the casting couch. You hear the stories of what happened.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like parallels that. And I like that they brought that up, but in their own way. And I believe when he knew he was in oh shit territory was when he went back to the house and he saw the mess. She's like, "Oh, that's the dog." And then like 2 minutes later, she's like, "Oh, we don't have a dog." He's like, "Oh, fuck. Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Here we go."
Yeah.
So yeah,
Red
he's a
flag
dumbass.
number
He's
2.
a dumbass and an idiot regardless. In the end, yeah.
Not Superman right there.
He is not Superman.
Yeah, to me, I personally don't buy into his whole story. I think he's not
It's a facade.
He owns a car in 1918. I mean, for a projectionist, and for a bohemian, as he says, that travels a lot. Why do you own a car? That to me is the first kind of red flag that he's not really being honest. He probably owns the movie theater and, or something like that. And he's
I think he preys on women. That's what he does with her. He does with women every other day. He's a projectionist and he preys on women that's his thing. Yeah.
He's definitely done that before. You can tell. He's definitely no stranger to that situation.
Let's get to the scarecrow scene. I love that scene.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Go ahead, Ant. Let's talk about that.
I mean, talk about Wizard of Oz. Mia Goth in this scene. It's
talk
like,
about fucked up Wizard of Oz.
Do you laugh or do you like look away or do you cringe? It's like all the above.
I'm going
it's
like
you
this
do
the
everything.
Whole time.
I'm married. She's like, it's such a fucked up. This is like fucked up awesomeness. It's so messed up. It's so good. Yeah. But it also starts to show her sexual desire, and it feeds into all that where you go to X, like, okay, she's had this like crazy bug the whole time. It's just so, and she doesn't have a man there with her, which is why she also goes to projectionist, but it's just so fucked up what she does with the scarecrow. It's so good though. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if we can describe it on YouTube, but it's just such a good scene when she just pretty much rides a scarecrow, man. She gets off, and it's it's so messed up. It's so messed up. But her acting, it's like you want to laugh, but you also are like kind of scared of her at the same time, because she clearly has she's a cuckoo bird up there. She has some stuff going on. It's just such a good messed up scene, but it's so fucked up Wizard of Oz, and it's so necessary. That's the scene where you have to have in the movie.
You have to have it, and it's moments like these that where you don't need kills throughout the entire runtime.
Right.
Moments
Right.
like this is what keep you on edge enough and keep you uneasy enough to where you have no idea what Pearl is going to do next. I talked about the egg cracking scene, but this scene is really kind of takes the cake and is the most memorable. I mean, anyone who's seen this movie, you just have to say Scarecrow, and they have so many emotions flood them, and like you said, they get embarrassed, they get, they start to laugh. You don't know if to laugh or not. So yeah, I remember seeing this in theaters, and this scene was definitely something in a packed theater for sure.
Yeah, when she knocks the Scarecrow down off the post. I mean, just that shot of like it landing and thud. It's almost like a body sound.
Yep.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
the audience lost it during that moment. And then it's like, okay, wait, what is she doing? I mean, it's you don't want her to do it, but yet you want it to have it because it fits with just the fucked up nature of the movie.
Yeah.
She's
For
sexually
sure, yeah.
frustrated, man. She's a very sexually frustrated woman.
Yeah, no, clearly, she's
Yeah.
making eyes with the Scarecrow.
Frickin' Howard, man, he could have gotten a medical
Poor Howard.
leave from
Poor
the
Howard.
army. He just had to go and
Listen,
be
man.
in the army.
Howard
and
made
be a
up for
good
that.
guy.
All the years when he's bringing these victims to her for the years that followed, he made up for it.
I know.
Poor Howard is a real victim, I think, of the whole fucking.
He really is. No, Howard, I feel bad for. I mean,
Yeah, I
come
feel
back
bad
home
for
and find
too, and
that.
we get some layers to him too through his sisters, through the sister-in-law Mitzi, one of the other big characters in the film and part of the climax of the film, my favorite part of the film that we'll talk about for sure. But yeah, you get some layers to him. How he grew up very privileged, very wealthy family. But he wanted more, kind of how Pearl wants more, but in the opposite way. He wants to make it on his own, so he becomes a farmhand, and that's how he meets Pearl. He works on her farm, and they eventually obviously get married, but, he has an opportunity to not go to war. How many people would do that? I'd like to say that I'd be a good patriotic American, but if my parents had the means to keep me safe and keep me from going overseas, especially back then, World War I, that was a big deal. So that really gives you a sense of what kind of character he is. He's a stand-up guy in a way. So when the ending happens and you get the background from X and what he's done for the love of his life, Pearl, it's really sad, and it's you feel bad for him. I mean, he's a villain and he's done a lot of bad in his time for sure, and they highlight that. But it's like Pearl is just has such a stranglehold on him, I guess. I mean, he's so, I don't know. I mean, they, like you said, Phil, they don't give us a whole lot. They give you just enough to kind of open up your mind and open up your imagination, but
Right.
we don't know the dynamics fully of their relationship because the movie ends as soon as they see each other. So I think it's a perfect ending too, because it leaves it just open enough to where your kind of mind races. So
Right.
I really think that they did a good job kind of highlighting Howard as well indirectly, in conversations with his sister and stuff. Perfect job.
And you figure this is a guy who has seen the hells of war, and particularly World War I, which was at that point the most gruesome war in human history. So he has seen some things, and yet it's very quick. But when he does return home and he's in the kitchen or he's in the dining room and he sees what's right in front of him, it's almost like whatever he saw over in Europe sort of pales in comparison to what is right there in front of him. And then, of course, with the shot of her right behind him, like, I mean, that's nightmare fuel in its own right. And, like, again, you can't help but feel bad for this character. Like, he does, this is someone who does the right thing and literally gets nothing out of it. Like, I mean, he's signing himself up for a lifetime of hell and torture.
Yeah.
But he does it. He does it.
Well, no, that's
his
again.
life.
He
Yep.
no, he does. You're very right about that. He he could have ran out the door, but
Right.
he
Dummy.
stayed. That's Howard right there.
That is
yeah,
Howard for you.
you're never gonna. I mean, we'll see if they ever expand on it more in the future, but you're really never gonna get that answer. I mean, you get
No.
the pathetic old man in X, and I call him pathetic because he is. I mean, he's just withered old man who's given up, and you can tell from different dialogue with Pearl that Pearl has completely ruined his life and has just controlled him and left him on this farm to rot, and they just don't do anything with their lives except what they're doing in X. But in Pearl, he's a soldier. He's a young guy. He, like you said, he's a stand-up guy who has convictions and knows what he wants to do. So it's very fascinating. It's like, how does that guy who comes home to see that stay with a person like Pearl? I mean, I'd love to know more about his character and how he kind of succumbs to, because it really is a mystery to me. I'm not sure if you guys have any theories on, psychologically what would, like, maybe him being a soldier prepped him for that, but I would think it would almost be the opposite. Like, he has, I don't know. I don't know. It's very fascinating. Yeah.
It's almost like it's everything goes out the window because he clearly loves this woman so much. I mean, again, we get hints of that through what Mitzi says, through his letters. I mean, the fact that his picture is by the bed, again, it's subtle, but I think there's such a strong theme of a love story that carries through. I mean, we see it manifest itself in a rather disturbing way by the end in X, but I think it really is a situation of just the power of love and sort of this relationship that they have, and in a weird way, he almost becomes like how her father is in this film. He becomes sort of captive to this situation. Certainly, her father is no fault of his own because of his health, but he almost becomes captive willingly. And again, I think it goes back to that, just this connection, this power that he has for this woman. I mean, even when she tries to sort of rationalize it or explain it to Mitzi, even she doesn't quite understand why someone like Howard is with someone like her. And I think the only answer you can come to is there's just such a strong bond and connection, and maybe because they're similar in a lot of ways, but yet they are so different from both their sort of situations growing up, but also their worldview as well.
And I think when you said captive, that's a good word, because he has all of his eggs in one basket. I mean, he made his bed with Pearl and the farm, so he's overseas. He's dreaming of coming back and seeing his wife and living happily ever after on this farm. It's all he's ever wanted. So he comes back to this scene. His sister's dead, so he can't return to his family. I mean, what is he going to say to his mother? So it's almost like he has no other choice. He's made his bed, so to speak, and he just has to kind of deal with the situation in front of him. And that's got to be tough, though. I mean, you're dreaming, you're writing letters to your wife, you're fantasizing about returning home and having this fairy tale ending, and you walk into that. I mean, oh my gosh.
He's crazy in love, man. He is crazy in love. I also think it goes to show where obviously back in the day, when you chose your person, that's the person. That's not like they're divorced today. It's like when you chose that person, you're stuck with that. That's your person for better or worse, and you just deal with it. It goes to show how it was back in that time period as well. And he obviously stuck by her side, for better or worse, throughout the entire, their lives going to X. But he's like, this is my woman, and that's the woman that I'm stuck with forever. I'm going to have to cater to her needs.
For sure. Okay, so I want to get to, I made a pretty bold statement with the dinner scene. How do you guys feel about that scene? I thought that was
so good.
That was one of the highlights in the movie. That scene and the scene towards the end, her monologue, are my two favorite moments of the film. Do we want to talk about that real quick and just your overall thoughts on just how fucking awesome that scene was with her and her mother, Ruth? So cool. And even her father, Pearl's father, his facial acting in that scene, you're like,
He's
You
terrified,
poor dude, man.
He is
Oh
terrified.
my god.
He's really the unsung hero of this movie in terms of performance.
He's the innocent one too.
No, seriously, the poor guy is in the wheelchair the entire time. But no, his reactions and even like when she's cleaning him up later on, and you can just see just by the twitch of his eye, like he is legitimately terrified of this woman. But on to the dinner scene. I mean, Nolan, it might be the greatest dinner scene in any horror film.
Wow.
And again, I say that as someone that really enjoys the Hereditary exchange, but there's just so much going on in this particular exchange. You have the clash of worldviews, the clash of philosophies. I mean, just from a cinematography level, and shout out to the DP Elliot Rocket, because he really knows how to capture beautiful bright images, but yet when he wants to go dark and ominous, I mean, this scene is beautifully shot, just with the reflection of the fire and sort of the lack of light on their faces. But it's just such a moment where we've led to this scene. I mean, this in many ways is the climax of the film, and everything else in a lot of ways is epilogue, because this is it. This is where Pearl and Ruth hash it out. And I mean, her mother in many ways is almost as frightening, or even more so during the beginning of that scene. I mean, when she comes at him with a knife, I'm like, oh shit, is she going to try to stab Pearl or something? It's unsettling, and again, it's not a lot of physical fighting. They're not punching each other around. There's a few slaps, and obviously with what happens with the fire, but it's a battle of wits. It's screaming, it's shouting, it's I'm right, you're wrong, so to speak. And again, it never really has a resolution, because obviously what happens with Ruth and the fire, but it's just a masterclass in both suspense and tension, because I mean, you're right on the edge of your seat from the minute sort of she pulls out that pamphlet, and you're like, oh shit, things are going down right now. Ruth is on to her, and okay, how's Pearl going to get out of this one? And of course, it sort of all spills out, and again, just from the symbolism of it happening at the dinner table, and sort of with a communal meal. I mean, it just, again, this script is so freaking brilliant, and again, just from a pure acting standpoint, I mean, they both bring their A game to this film, to this scene. I mean, they had that X factor, if you will.
No, for sure. I love this scene. This scene's perfect. This whole sequence is just perfection. My thing is, I almost would. This is the plateau of the movie for me. The rest of the movie's awesome. She gets her kills in, but nothing lives up to this sequence for the rest of the movie. And I almost wish she delivered. I mean, we'll get to the monologue, which is like the best acting, A+++, like masterclass in acting. But I almost wish she delivered the monologue to her mom. And I almost wish her mom was the final kill of the movie, if they could have placed it there and have it all build up to that. Because I don't think, I mean, like I said, I love her monologue with Mitzi, and I love the kill with the projectionist, but nothing for the rest of the movie lives up to the amount of tension that I felt in this scene, because it just boiled. And then when her mom caught on fire and just like, oh my god, and she's still alive, and she just throws her in the basement. It's just crazy epic shit. But I almost think that Ruth deserved to be the final kill of the movie. That would have been a badass final standoff. But I do think this is the sequence of the entire movie for me. If you want like a clip reel for an award show, you go here and Mia Goth's monologue. This is just the moment of the movie. But I almost wish that it just built up to that, and that was the moment, the end of the movie where you left off on. But it's perfect. Like everything Phil said. The poor dad, he's there in terror when he sees his wife go in flames. He's like, and when she comes back, he's terrified of his daughter. It's just, everything plays out so well. It's so well executed, so well directed. Ty West, I mean, he should have been nominated, let alone Mia Goth, for this. But yeah, so this is, to me, is the sequence of the entire movie. it's so important for her character, the mom's character, and it's important for each character in that scene. It's the most pivotal moment of the entire movie.
I see what you're saying in terms of Ruth and her character and how she deserved to almost be the final climax, the kill. I think it's correctly placed. I don't think it would have had the same impact if we get the other kills before it and we get to that at the end. I think it's placed perfectly because in a way there's no turning back. This is the moment, like Phil said, this is the moment, the crux of the film, where Pearl makes not a conscious decision, but it's conscious afterwards when she hides the body in the basement and, all that stuff. This is a real turning point for her character, and everything was building up to that. So I don't think it would have had the same impact if she was killing the projectionist and, killing Mitzi and killing all those people, and then she had this with her mom. I think it's placed good. And we talk about Hereditary. I think there are a lot of parallels with that scene, and I think it's fair to put it up against that because, you have the buildup, you have the mother who finally, in both movies, finally has just had enough, and it's almost like they should have done this sooner. And it's built up to where they just can't hold it in anymore. And you have Pearl in this case, which is different than in Hereditary, but in this case, Pearl is clearly not a good person. She's clearly our villain, but in this moment, she's just a little girl getting scolded by her mother. And it's really powerful for sure. I'm not going to say it's better than Hereditary, but I would say it's in the same conversation for sure.
They're both excellent.
And the poor dad, excellent. Like we said, he just leaves him there. Leaves him at the dinner
literally
table.
The whole night, just right there.
Whole night, yeah. I mean, we don't know. We say poor dad, but I get a sense that he was the abuser in the family before he became sick. I don't think this is normal for Ruth to lash out like that. Ruth was very stern and very cold towards her daughter, but I don't think they had many blow-ups like this, like they did. I think this was a culmination of everything, and I think the father really was the disciplinary in this dynamic because, again, the times for sure, right. It was always the male who did that stuff. So right. I think this was Ruth just finally having enough of Pearl's shit. And, she reveals that, like, Pearl, I know who you are. I see you when you think nobody's watching you.
I love that, by the way, when she says that.
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
It's so like, good. Oh, shit, because you maybe assume that she's just like this, older woman. The mom just kind of doesn't really have a grasp on what's going on. But so when she says that, you're like, oh, shit, like, it's going to go down, like, right
she's
here,
no
right
dummy,
now.
yeah,
Like, here we go. Yeah, she's no dummy, yeah. Give her a lot of credit in that scene for sure. She's a smart character.
Like, imagine a final standoff between them two, though. Like, that's what I'm saying. That would have been fucking badass.
Yeah, I don't think it would have added it. I think it was enough of a build-up for me. I don't think we needed that extra build-up for the end of the movie. I think it was fine where it was.
Because this is really when Pearl becomes Pearl, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah,
this
100%.
is the moment where everything sort of comes to fruition. I mean, she makes that final switch.
Well, she really becomes Pearl when her audition goes bad. That's when the real Pearl comes out after that.
yeah. No, but
the mask comes off.
Like what you said, how she becomes Pearl. There are a lot of prequels that kind of don't get to that point until the very end. Right. I mean, I think of, and we shouted out before their Star Wars episode coming out. Not to talk too much about Star Wars, but the fall of Anakin Skywalker. He doesn't become Darth Vader until the last shot of the prequels. It's like, I wanted more of him transitioning into that character. So, but we get that in Pearl. We get her after this dinner scene really coming into her own and becoming the villain that she was always going to be. So I really do appreciate this scene so much. It's
gradual throughout the movie. It's not just like, boom, here it is. It's a build-up, which is where Pearl exceeds at. It's all build-up.
Yeah.
And the fact that there's a extra layer to when she gets to the audition, and this scene has already happened. She's now free from the shackles of her mother and even her father. I mean, they're the last thing on her mind when she rides her bike to that church, and it's very eerie and it's very creepy, and she is just no rear view mirror at all. She is full system go, driving ahead in her life, and it's so creepy how she can just kind of compartmentalize what just happened and kind of show up to the audition and not be phased whatsoever. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the song and dance.
It's so good. That's what's in her. I mean, I love how when she does the performance, what she thinks is happening, like she's like giving. I mean, she is giving her all, but she puts on a show in her head. It's so damn good. It's. I mean, Ty West and Mia Goth made the best decision by having that. That's how it plays out in her head. And then when you cut to the reveal, when they just say we're gonna pass, like you're too, like we're not looking for this. It's just like because you are rooting for her in the moment because she did like she put her everything into that, and they're like, sorry, it's gonna be a no, and you're like, oh, and then when she does the whole no, I'm a star, it's so good because you feel her in that moment that her entire life dreams with that one response after the performance crushed. She's like, okay, now I'm secluded to a life on the farm. I'm secluded to being my mom. Yeah. So it's just, but that, again, that seems so crucial because that's where I think she really is like, turns into the Pearl that we know in X. It's so good. It's so good. And I get nervous for Mitzi every time. I'm like, oh, girl, you better stay away.
No, I know. It's terrifying. I mean, especially their exchange outside of the church where,
so good.
Mitsu's trying to be all sort of, happy-go-lucky and, right. Everything's going to be great. And, sister-in-law's got to stick together. And, she's just looking dead straight ahead. Like, it's got to be me. It's going to be me. And she even mentions, oh, you've got all your bags. And aren't you confident? It's, Pearl is on a one-track mind. She is getting the hell out of Texas and going, anywhere but back to that farm. And again, you can't help but feel bad for her because it's like, wow, literally her entire dream has just been pulled out from right under her, and now, I mean, what is left? It's Howard and the farm, and yeah, that's all it is, murder and mayhem. It's all good,
The way it's played out. Sorry. Go ahead, Phil.
It's one. No. Go ahead, Nolan.
No, I was just gonna say the way that the song and dance and the audition plays out is so awesome because you're sitting there and you're expecting a super uncomfortable performance and for her to just bomb, right? Because the way it starts, and then you get inside of her mind and you get the whole dance and you get the background with the fireworks and the war and the other dancers come on stage and she's killing it, right? Yeah. And who knows if she's actually killing it in reality because we're now in her mind, but she's doing an amazing job and you're like, holy shit, maybe she does have the chops for this. And then for her to end the number and for them to instantly reject her, like not even a debate, they just say, yeah, we're good. Like she never had a chance. I mean, they had already made up their mind before she stepped on stage. And that's kind of a microcosm of Hollywood. And we can get into that. But I love the shots of seeing all of her, her parents and the projectionist at the table. We skipped ahead of his death. We'll have to get back to his death because she did kill him before this audition. We'll have to get back to that. But yeah, I think it's a great scene. It's not as impactful as some of the other scenes that we're talking about, the dinner scene and stuff, but I think it's a great moment. There's a lot of moments in the movie where Pearl kind of turns the corner and, her parents are essentially dead. I don't think she had killed her father yet at this point. Or did she?
No, he was dead.
He was dead? Okay.
Yeah,
she smothered him right before.
Yeah.
That was right before, right? Okay, so her parents are dead. This projectionist who was supposed to take her to Europe and be her star is now dead. So everything is riding on this little tiny church group that goes around the state. I mean, it's such small scale, but to her it's everything. And it's so funny because it's like a sane person would take that and be like, okay, I'll get him next time. There's always I'm young, but to her, it's no. Like, I need this. And then, of course, you said, I'm a star. The line, I'm a star. It's just delivered so brilliantly. It's been memed to death, rightfully so, because it's so funny and so impactful. But Yeah, I love that sequence so much. But yeah, let's go back to the projectionist death, because I know I enjoyed this a lot. Like I was talking about the never split up moments. This guy was, like you said, Phil, was on his A game when he's in his element, but he is not in his element during the sequence, and it clearly shows because he does not know what to do or say. And I love the moment where he questions her, and she's like, "I feel very deeply, so I know that you're lying." Like I'm like, "Oh my god!"
He puts
dude,
two and two together a little too late. A little too late.
Yeah.
Two and two together.
a little too late, and then he does not have any sense of
It's like,
urgency
dude,
whatsoever.
get out of there, man.
He's still, I
No,
think,
he
because of
strolls back
his
to the car.
yeah, because of his past experience
Yeah.
of him being able to kind of talk his way out of everything, because he is that suave guy. He thinks that Pearl
Exactly.
is fine. Like, he knows that she's fucked up, but he doesn't have that urgency because I feel like in a way he thinks that he still talked his way out of it, but he clearly
Right.
didn't. Yeah.
No, I mean the poor guy like should have checked that watch like 5 minutes sooner. I mean, it's just that's where I go back and think like this guy is probably just nothing but a great con. Like
He's a con artist,
if
yeah.
this was if this was some worldly and wise beyond his years fella, you think he might have, like you said, had a little bit more urgency, or again been able to maybe pick up on the signs that all was not going right on the farm here, and yet he's just looking around almost like smelling the flowers kind of a thing, and it's like buddy, get the hell out of there. But again, I think that sort of plays into his arrogance in a way, and maybe even naivete that like, oh, how bad can it really be? Like, okay, I sweet talked my way out of this one, I'll get the next one kind of a thing. But it's such a chilling scene. Like it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, are they really gonna go for it? And of course they do, but it's not that first moment when he's in the car with the pitchfork. What gets it for me is once he falls out of the car and like he's dying, but he's pleading and begging, and then they do that great wide shot where she just takes the
It's so
pitchfork,
good.
and again, it's I mean that's the stuff of that's the money shot in a lot of ways in a slasher movie. It's pitch perfect.
And it introduces the pitchfork. She used it on the goose, she used it on him, and she used it again in X.
Yeah. Any thoughts, Ant? Just you
No,
like the
it
scene
is.
too?
It's a good scene. Again, it doesn't. I think it comes like pretty quickly after the dinner scene, so it pales in comparison to that. But as a death scene, I mean, you knew once his character was introduced, you knew his death was coming at some point. And I think that the way they played it out, where I like that it gradually, like, he brings her home. He walks through the house. He's like, oh, something's not right. What's going on? You said you have a dog. You don't have a dog. And then she's like, he's like, I'll call you. I'll be back later. She's like, you're lying. You're lying. Like she's putting it together. She's like, I'm killing him. And I just think the way it plays out, I like that it's not just he walks into the house and she kills him. It plays out over the course of a few minutes, and it's, again, the build-up is what works the best for Pearl, and I like that his death was built up to that moment. So yeah, it's good, and I'm happy that he needed a death. We needed a death in the movie, and he was the right one to kill at that moment.
Let's get to the big monologue.
The
So
Oscar
this time
moment.
around,
Oh, this is
I
the Oscar
timed
clip.
it. It was a
6
5-minute and 35-second one
Okay.
take. So I timed it myself. Don't worry, I used my stopwatch.
Oh, you did.
Not quite
You
6
timed
minutes,
it.
but-
Okay.
Oh yeah. I wanted to see exactly. So
But that's
the
amazing.
monologue was longer, but the actual one take was 5.5
Okay.
minutes. And dude, I mean, fuck. You could give me 3 months to rehearse that, and I don't fucking pull that off. And you give me 1,000 takes. I mean, dude, this was her moment. This was her Oscar moment. This was everything. I love it so much. Every time this scene gets to where it is and they start talking, I'm just waiting for it. And I pick up on it's such a roller coaster, right? I mean, she goes into so many different things in this monologue. You can kind of focus on different things each watch, and it's so brilliant. I think the best part of the one take is what we don't see. So when she reveals that she has killed people and she has killed her parents, we don't cut to Mitzi. So I think that's the most brilliant part of the scene, because as an audience, I remember sitting in the theater just almost internally screaming at the film, like, let me see Mitzi's reaction. We never get her instant. We can only imagine like her look of terror when she's saying this, and I think it was so brilliantly done. And after the 6 minutes, you finally cut to Mitzi at the end, and but it's been so long. It's been a couple minutes since some of the big stuff that she revealed that Mitzi was almost able to compose herself. But the fact that we never see her instant reaction, that's ballsy to do, because many filmmakers are going to want to show that shot, are going to want to see
cut back and forth,
both characters working together. But it's all about Pearl in this, and it's all about, I mean, it's a microcosm of the movie, obviously, but it's so well done. Kudos to Mia Goth and especially Ty West for directing this scene, for sure.
Dude, a round of applause for Mia Goth. How did she not win the Oscar for this moment? It pisses me off. It's so annoying. But I knew once that audition was over, and they pretty much told Pearl, they're like, we're looking for a Mitzi type. We're not looking for you. So you knew once that audition ended and they went back to the house, Mitzi girl, you're in trouble. Run. Run. And I love how she just sits there and then she just says, at the end, after the monologue, she's like, okay, I should be going. It's like, girl, yeah, you should have been going halfway through that monologue, girl. It's so good. I love it. It's perfect.
Should have left 5 minutes ago.
We give all the props to Mia Goth, but when you do cut back to Mitzi, that actress, again, her name, I said it earlier, Emma Jenkins Pearl, her reaction to that, she's really good in that scene playing off Mia Goth. I mean, you're going toe-to-toe to meet with Mia Goth. That's hard to do. And her reaction shot, I'm just like, girl, I'm rooting for her. I'm run, get up, get out. Please do it. But it's perfectly played out. I mean, this is a never split up moment, 110%. When she asked, I'm like, girl, you're fucking up once you leave this house. Just run, stop looking back. But it's perfect. I mean, Mia Goth, I don't know how she pulled it off, but it's just an all-timer scene. It's so damn good. What about you, Phil?
It's a masterclass. I mean, I have no notes with this particular scene. I mean, just from an acting standpoint, it's one of the great moments of any actor frankly, in any kind of a film. Forget horror for a minute. I mean, this is just a wonderful piece of acting. And again, I love it how it's all on her, as it should be with regards to the story. But the fact that it's a riverboat, a roller coaster, pick your descriptor of emotions. I mean, she's unhinged. She's sort of crying. She's laughing. She's experiencing joy and happiness and triumph and defeat. I mean, she does it all in 6 minutes, confined to a seat. And yet you get a whole picture of the character. You understand, if you can, her motivation. You don't have to endorse it, but you can at least get into the mind of this character and understand where she has been, why she has arrived at this moment. And it's unsettling, because once we finally do see Mitzi's reaction, and she's perfect. I don't think she gets enough credit in this scene, because to be going head to head like that with Mia Goth, you got to have some acting chops, and she clearly does. But just their little exchange of glances, and it's not like they have a huge discussion. It's very quick snippets of dialogue, and then you've got that, just that look that Goth gives, and it's almost like a bizarre twinkle in her eye, where it's like, okay, I know what's going on here. Don't lie to me. And again, I love it how she's trying to play along for as long as she can, but Pearl has sniffed it out. She knows what happened with the audition, and it just, again, it sort of feeds into, if you weren't terrified before, damn it, you better be terrified right now. And I mean, don't let the door hit you on the way out, Mitzi. I mean, get the hell out of there.
This is the moment in the movie where Pearl is now verbalizing her inner monologue and her thought process. And like you said, it's a roller coaster of emotions. She is just talking about, she's going through everything. It's almost like a conversation you would have in your mind when you're laying down for the night and you're thinking about your decisions in life. And it's her at a table, verbalizing that. It's so well done, and we get the most out of how her mind works in this 5-minute scene than we do the rest of the hour and 40 runtime of the movie. I mean, we really see how she ticks and how she comes to the ultimate conclusion that, her mom was right, and she does have to just make the best of what she's got. And, so you kind of alluded to it, Phil. Do you think that Mitzi got the part? Where do you land on that? I don't think she did.
I don't think she did either.
I think it goes to Emma Jenkins' acting in this scene. Yeah. I believe she's a newcomer. I don't really think she's in anything else. So credit to her. She was awesome. Her look of confusion when Pearl says, like, it's okay, like, you can tell me. She's like, what are you talking about? She's like, you got the part. And that was the only real sincere moment where Mitzi was being herself, because she was genuinely confused, and she was like, no, I didn't get it. So I don't think that she got it. She eventually admits to it, but it's because of, it's self-preservation at that point. She's just doing anything she can say to get out of the room. She thinks that's going to get her out quickly, so she kind of gives in. She's like, okay, I don't want Pearl to think that I'm lying to her, so she's convinced that I'm lying. I'm going to flip the script and kind of appease her in the moment. I don't know if that's how you guys took it. I've talked to other people, and they think that maybe she got the part, but I don't think she did.
It's too on the nose. I mean, I get it. There's that dialogue before about, we're looking for the blonde, all-American type, but that's such an easy way to go, because we've seen those moments in movies before, and this, to me, I think is much more interesting, because, like you said, her reaction is genuine confusion. She's like, what are you talking about? And I mean, clearly she's playing along. This is not someone who's trying to hide the fact that she got the part. She didn't get the part, I think. And she's just, okay, whatever you say, Pearl, or if you think I got the part, fine. Okay, you have a good day now. Yeah, I mean, it's a little brilliant form of sort of subtle manipulation on her part, of, again, trying to think, all right, I'll get the upper hand here. If that's what she wants, all right, fine, have at it.
And that's why I give credit to the actress, because this entire time you can feel how uncomfortable she is, except for that moment of confusion where you can tell there's a difference. That is genuine confusion in her face. And it's a brilliant performance from her, for sure.
Yep, absolutely. Co-sign 100%.
You're on board, Ant, with that?
100% agree. 100%. She was like, no, I didn't get the part. By the end, she's like, okay, I got the part. You're being crazy. Let me just... so 100%. And she killed it in that moment. Yeah, but I don't think that she got the part. Honestly, no way.
Okay. And this leads to my personal favorite kill with my personal favorite weapon, the axe.
Oh, poor Mitzi.
I know. I love the image, the visual of her with the axe. It's so cool. It's so iconic. It's a culmination of the entire movie, and it's at this point, Mitzi's a goner. I mean, obviously, if you've seen any horror movie in your life, you know that what's about to happen. So in this regard, you're rooting for her at the table, but once she leaves the house, and then that shot of Pearl just swinging the door open, oh my God, like, she is now fully, I guess, in her element. She is fully committed to this new persona, because her movements are so much different than the rest of the film, and she's so convicted in what she's about to do. It's fucking awesome. I love it so much. And like I said, the visual of the axe, her standing over her and her slashing her while she's running away, it's fucking brilliant. I fucking love it so much.
It's terrifying. Terrifying the best possible way.
No, it's a
and then we get Yeah, we get finally we get to the ending of her setting up the dinner table.
Fucking.
And you know what? You know what strikes me the most is that Howard doesn't come home that day or even the next day.
Nope.
You could tell by
And
the
time.
withering of the corpses and how much more maggots were on the food. There's mold in the soup. That has been sitting there for probably at least weeks, if not months. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe upwards of a month or so before Howard arrives home. And it's the fact that she's been there the whole time, I guess, waiting for him. I don't really quite know. She's just kind of waiting for him to arrive home. It's so creepy. And poor Howard, like we said, I mean, holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Talk about out of the frying pan and into the fire. Damn, man. Damn.
Not a great homecoming for Howard.
But welcome to your life going forward, Howard. This is how it's going to
No.
be.
No, welcome to the rest of your life forever.
Yep, and then it takes us to one of the other iconic shots with the ending credit. The one take of, Pearl just smiling into the camera.
It's so
Dude,
good. It's so
the
good.
most
the money
memorable,
shot
the
right
most
there.
memorable ending credits shot I can think of in recent memory. I mean, holy shit. I believe I read that was kind of an impromptu thing. They didn't really rehearse that or practice that beforehand. They decided that, I believe, day of. And Mia Goth, of course, just fucking killed it right away with no rehearsal or anything, because that's just the superstar that she is. She's a star. She's a star for sure.
She is a star. Oh, it's terrifying. It's a perfect way to end the movie, because you can again project so much on to that one shot. Because is she happy? Is she sad? Is she becoming more unhinged? Like, what's her reaction to Howard's reaction? Like, there's just so much going on. And again, I love it that the movie doesn't take you there. It lets you linger with it. And again, it's the money shot. It's so unnerving and in a weird way exciting. Like, it's a perfect way to end this tale.
We never get Howard again. We never see Howard.
No, it's all
we just
her.
assume that he's also just standing there. I almost envision him talking or yelling at her, but we don't hear that. We just see the visual of her, because her face changes multiple times.
Yeah.
Like, I almost envision Howard being like, "What the fuck is going on?" and him just freaking out, but we don't see or hear any of that. We literally just see Pearl processing his homecoming. It's so fucking brilliant. I love it.
Howard's on
it's
mute.
good, and I love that her reaction, her smiling is almost her putting on a happy face, but she's accepting her fate, that this is going to be her fate for the rest of her life.
Yeah.
For sure. So yeah, good job, guys. That was Pearl, released in 2022. We did it. I thought that was a great discussion. Let's go ahead. Do we have any final thoughts on the movie before we get into our never split up moment, or do you want to just roll right into that?
Let's roll into it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it. So I won the poll, so I will get to pick the order. I'm gonna let Phil go. He's never done this before, so I'm gonna let him go first. He can pick his moment, and then I will go second. And sorry, you're gonna have to go third, because I'm gonna relish this victory. I don't get many of them, but so go ahead, Phil. Why don't you kick us off? And for anyone new here to the podcast, I haven't kind of explained this in a while. I feel like, just real quick. We're called the Never Split Up Podcast. It's a play on the classic trope to never split up in a horror movie. We pick a dumb moment from the film that a character makes. It doesn't have to be a character splitting up per se. We just call it that, and we decide what the most dumb moment is in the film, and we choose that as our moment, and then we have you guys vote in our poll on Twitter and also on Instagram to see who's got the, I guess, dumbest moment and whose moment you agree with more. So it's just a fun little game we play. So Phil, why don't you go first and pick your moment, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. So for me, it is the end of the film. It's with Mitzi. Like, God love you. You're trying to be the good sister-in-law. You're trying to have a heart-to-heart with Pearl. Okay, the minute she drops the drops the revelation about what's been going on the old family farm, she should have hightailed it out of there. I mean, forget the drinks, forget pretending you're Howard trying to help a friend. Get the hell out of there, Mitzi. Like, I'm sorry. You should have left. Don't let the door hit you on the way out.
That's such a good moment, especially because she sees the pig on the porch.
Bingo.
Right off the bat, and she asks Pearl, she's like, "Is that our pig?" Right there. I mean, I know Mitzi, she's good-hearted, she's good-intended. She was almost too naive in a sense for this movie. She never stood a chance in the clutches of Pearl, for sure. Yeah, so that's obviously the quintessential moment for sure. Okay, I'll go next. There's a couple different ones I could pick. I'm gonna go with. This is a tough one. I'm gonna pick the projectionist. Specifically, him. I can't get too vague because I want to leave something for Anthony because there's only so many characters we can pick. But I'm gonna pick him in the barn. Because up until this point, we know that we think that he is this super smooth guy, has been around the world. We can question that now after the fact, but yeah, I'm just yelling at the screen. I'm like, dude, it's over. Like, there's no amount of tact that's gonna get you out of this. Just hightail it and run. I mean, he tried to, I don't even know why, talking back about it, he tried to play it off because he was never going to see Pearl again. He was going to completely ghost her in a sense. So why even try to save face at this point? I mean, this girl is clearly unhinged. So the fact that he tried to, till the very end, play it off and try to be that smooth operator and, slowly walk back to his car and not check on her behind him and let her get the jump on him. That's an obvious moment for me where I was just screaming at the TV. So I'm gonna pick that one. I'm gonna pick the projectionist kind of ultimately dying because of, I guess, his bravado in a way.
Okay, cool. I mean, mine was going to be Mitzi, 100%. You guys, obviously, there's only so many characters in this movie, so there's not many to choose from. But I'm going to do a quick one because I think it's stupid. I think that I'm going to go with Howard. I think when Howard came back and he saw the mayhem, he should have been like, "Peace out, bitch. Like, this is done." And he just stuck around and he catered to Pearl for the rest of his life. So I would have been like, "I'm not doing this. See you later." And he has combat training. He could have killed her if she tried to kill him. Screw that. So I would have been like, I'm not doing this. Sorry. So mine's Howard staying with her after all, coming home to that. Fuck that. After being in war, you're going to come home to that? Nope. So I'm going to go with Howard.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah. It's almost like the horrors of war and coming back had almost paralyzed him in that moment. And that kind of just led to the fact that he was able to stay with her in a sense. Yeah, very, very fascinating character, Howard, for sure. I would love, I don't know how you guys feel. We're going to get the trilogy, but I would love for Mia Goth to grow with this role and have future movies because we have so many years in between these two films. I know less is more, but I would love to see even 5-10 years from now get another installment of the adventures of Pearl and Howard because they could really grow with this role and she could really make this kind of one of her legacies. That would be awesome to me as long as Ty West was involved still and Mia Goth had a hand in it. I think that would be incredible, me personally.
I am with you 1000%. I know they have loosely talked about the future even after Maxine. I hope it happens because yes, while you could leave it as it is, and certainly it works, just to see what could be done with this character. I mean, you've got a huge stretch of time from 1918 until X, which is I think 1975. I want to say 1970s,
yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah. So I mean, you've got a huge span of time where there's a lot that happened in this country that you could have Pearl and Howard get mixed up with on the farm. I mean, the Red Scare in the 1950s. I mean, set it during Christmas time. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff with this. I mean, I hope that we see Pearl again, because I think there is a lot more that could be uncovered and maybe could ultimately enhance this. But I'm with you, Nolan. I think like 10 years down the road, I mean, why not?
No, I agree.
Okay, you agree too.
Take a break after Maxine, though. Take a break. We need a break. Yeah. We need a break.
Okay, cool. I'm glad we're all, because, it's easy to say, like, horror has franchised themselves to death, and let's just keep this as a trilogy. That's valid too. I wouldn't say that that's not valid, but I think in the right hands, and if you kept the creative team intact, I think they could really do a good job for sure, and Pearl could really kind of cement herself as one of those awesome classic villains in the future for sure. Okay, without further ado, let's get to our scores. I'm really excited to hear your guys' score. I mean, we kind of were gushing about this movie the entire time, so I'm expecting some really good scores. Why don't we start with Anthony this time? We'll go with Ant first, and then we'll... well, I don't know what order you guys want to do. I guess we'll go me second, and we'll save Phil for last.
Okay, cool. Okay. Like I said, I mean, we've been gushing about it. I really enjoyed this movie. It's a great movie. It's an acting showcase for Mia Goth. Ty West showed his pro as a director too, when he's able to do two different movies within the same franchise. Completely different vibes. I do prefer X just because that's when I go to horror movies, I'm gonna go to X over Pearl all day, every day. This is like a horror drama character study, and if I want to go watch a horror movie, I'm gonna watch a full-on slasher X grimy 70s slasher movie. But I do love watching them back to back, and I think that Mia Goth is the sole reason this movie is talked about as much as it is, and it deservedly so. She's great. She should have won awards. I think I gave X a 7. I'm gonna give this a 7.7. It's right up there. It's just preference. Okay. So it's 7.7. They're both great. Not all-timers, though, for me. They're not all-timers.
We might have to bring Phil back on for a potential Maxine discussion to talk about predictions and stuff. Maybe we'll do that, because I know there's a lot of hype going into Maxine, and I know you're kind of especially hyped. I mean, it looks like it's potentially right up your alley, so that might be the best film in the trilogy for you, Anne. I'm kind of a little on the fence about it. I hope they take it in a good direction. I do have confidence in Ty West and Mia Goth, so it's going to be a good movie. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to stand on it, but it seems like, Ant, you're really excited for that movie.
Dude.
So maybe it'll crack the 8s for you at least.
Maxine's the fucking best trailer of the year. Maxine is going to be my favorite movie of the trilogy. I already know it. It's a whodunit slasher set in the 80s where they go on the set of friggin' Psycho. It's like Scream 3 wrapped in... It's going to be fucking awesome. And we get a final girl returning. Maxine's going to do her final girl thing. I don't know if she's going to end up being the final girl or the killer. I think it might be a little obvious if she's the killer. So I do think she's going to be the final girl. But I can just tell from that trailer, Maxine's going to be in the 9s for me. That's going to be a fucking banger. I'm sorry. It's going to be amazing.
Wow. Let's circle back to that after we visit Maxine.
I'll make a note about that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. This movie just works for me. You never know how a movie is going to land after you first view it. It's been a couple years now, almost 2 full years since this released, and this movie has so far worked for me in a way that I didn't anticipate. I didn't think it was going to be this rewatchable for me, but the overall, like I said, the overall vibe, the technicolor, the beautiful shots of the farm, and Mia Goth's performance, and the tight script that is just so keeps you on the edge of your seat. It works for me, and it has really stuck with me, and I always think about this movie. I always think about Mia Goth's performance. You see, if you're watching, you see the poster behind me. It's an amazing poster. I love all the visuals. So I like this more than X. I think it is actually more rewatchable than X. I don't think X hits the highs that Pearl hits. I think Pearl has way higher highs for me personally. So I'm going to give this a very good score. I'm going to give it an 8.8 out of 10.
I mean, as you probably could guess if you've listened to this far, I'm a big fan of this film. And when it comes to my horror films, there are very few movies that I will put in sort of that upper echelon, top shelf, if you will. I think your Halloween, your Shining, Scream, movies in that wheelhouse. Pearl is one of those movies I would put in those in that same conversation. I think this is easily one of the greats. I think it is subversive because it sort of it could go one way, but then it sort of works its way in another. You have sort of the added bonus of it being this like Technicolor fever dream, a madcap performance by Mia Goth, all the elements of a psychological horror with even the added bonus of some classic slasher moments. This movie, it's flawless for me. It's a work of art. It really is. I think, outside of just being a great entertaining film, it's one of the most well made horror films in recent years. I mean, just the craftsmanship from just a technical level is unlike many films in the genre. So I'm going to say for me, it's a big solid 9 without question, and it might even could even be higher than that. But I won't I won't gush too much. I'll try to seem somewhat objective. But
No.
no, this film I really have no notes for this movie. I'm with you, Nolan. It is more rewatchable for me. I mean, again, I enjoy X, but there's just something about Pearl. It has that X factor, and I'll leave it at that.
So where do you two think Maxine will fall in your ranking? I obviously think Maxine's going to be my number 1. Where do you guys think Maxine will fall?
Go ahead, Phil.
Right now, based on the trailer alone, I think Maxine will be my number 2 in the ranking. I mean, if Maxine comes in and blows the roof off the place and it surpasses Pearl, I mean, I'll gladly put it at number 1. But Pearl is sort of the benchmark of this trilogy for me. And I mean, maybe it will. I think it's going to be much different than X. I like the whodunit aspect. I mean, like you said, it's sort of Scream 3 wrapped up in an 80s slasher movie. I mean, the trailer has intrigued me,
Fuck yeah.
so I'm definitely thinking, okay, I know it's a movie I'm going to enjoy, but if I had to guess right now, I think it will fall in the number 2 slot. But I'm willing, I'm ready and willing to be proven wrong come July. So put it as to be determined.
I think I'd land with Phil. I'm definitely open for any sort of experience. I think if it has the same level of craftsmanship and love put in, I think it will land at number 2 for me as well. Just the overall subgenre, I think I'm gonna appreciate more. I'm a villain guy, so it's gonna be hard to knock Pearl off. I mean, I have Pearl at an 8.8, so it has to be a really, really pretty much all-timer movie for that to be my number 1. But you never know. I mean, I'm not gonna, like Phil said, I'm not gonna pigeonhole myself and go in with any sort of preconceived notions. The trailer was good. I think it was very effective. It gave you just enough, it kind of to give you the overall vibe. You don't really quite. I'm not quite sure where they're going to take it with the whole Night Stalker thing. I don't know if that's going to be a red herring, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to have a memorable villain like Pearl. I mean, it's going to be really hard to top that. But we'll see. We'll see. So I guess probably number 2, the way it looks, for sure. Maybe like low 8s, maybe mid 8s.
It will have a memorable
really
final girl, though, at Maxine. You know that.
We'll see. Like you said, I mean, they could take it a couple different directions, right? It could subvert everything and just make Maxine, not the final girl. So we'll see. Yeah, it's got a loaded cast.
Dude,
I know.
I'll tell you that.
Incredible.
So they could take any one of those actors and actresses and put them on the spotlight or make them the killer, make them the final girl. So we'll see. We'll see for sure. I think they may have some tricks up their sleeve.
Oh, yeah, I think expectations are going to be turned on their head with this film. That's my assumption from the trailer.
Calling it best of the trilogy, Maxine.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much, Phil, for joining us.
Thank you
once again, Anthony, and thank you to all of our loyal listeners. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for listening to this episode. Again, if you want to shout out your podcast, Phil, and where to find you on social media real quick, you go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you guys. Certainly we'll have to do this again, have you back on the show. Mine is Phil at the Movies, new episodes every Friday. You can find it in the podcasting apps, on YouTube, and all of the social media handles will be in the show notes. If you want to stalk me that way, you can do that.
Yes, and congrats for making the leap to YouTube, Phil, for sure. You just made the leap. Welcome to YouTube. Everyone go subscribe to his channel. Again, we'll link his channel below and all of his social media. So definitely check him out. He runs a great show over there. So thanks, guys. Thanks for listening. This was episode 51 covering Pearl, and we will see you next time. Bye.